Please comment where you are watching in the world. The first thing you should know is that I have poured drinks for men who order espresso martinis at 10 a.m., and I've made small talk with women who sip Chardonnay like it's holy water. I thought I'd seen every possible way a drink order could tell you about a person. I was wrong. The second thing you should know is that I wasn't going to go on this date at all. I was 2 shifts deep into a 5-day run behind the bar. My feet felt like they'd been replaced with clenched fists, and my social battery was flatter than the soda gun after midnight. But then there were his messages, long, careful paragraphs that felt like they'd been written by someone who didn't just want to talk to me, but wanted to know me. I like the way you describe music, he'd written after I'd gone on a tangent about drummers who treat the snare like it's a heartbeat. I like the way you say tender about cymbals. So I showed up. The bar was one of those dim, narrow places where the lighting is the color of regret, amber and shadowy, like you're already halfway to making a bad decision. He was sitting at a corner table, posture slightly folded, like a man who'd grown too tall too fast and never quite learned where to put all his limbs. His name was Calder, like the sculptor. Kind face. Eyes that seemed to register everything. I slid into the seat opposite him, ran my eyes over the menu and said, "Whiskey sour?" He pressed his lips together, as though he'd just tasted invisible air. "Actually," he said, "could I get a glass of milk?" I thought he was joking. I laughed, not a polite laugh, but the kind that bursts out before you can stop it. He didn't laugh back. "Whole milk, if they have it," he added, completely serious. That was the moment I knew this was going to be a story, though I didn't yet know if it would be funny, sweet, or something I'd never tell anyone. The bartender, a friend of mine, raised an eyebrow when I ordered it. "You're kidding," she said. "I am not," I replied. She poured from some carton that probably hadn't been touched since brunch service, slid it toward me like contraband. When I set it down, Calder's eyes warmed. "Thank you," he said, and raised it the way men in movies raise whiskey before delivering a monologue. He took a long, reverent sip. A faint mustache of foam clung to his upper lip. He didn't wipe it away. "So," I said, clinging to normalcy, "what do you do?" "I teach meditation to teenagers," he said. His voice had the softness of someone who has learned to wrap his words in cotton wool before letting them out. "And I'm experimenting with purity." He didn't mean chastity, though that would have explained a lot. He meant what he called energetic purity. From his pocket, he pulled a folded piece of paper, creased and worn like it had lived there a long time. It was a list. No caffeine, no alcohol, no refined sugar after noon, no screens after sunset, no spiky music, heavy metal, trap, aggressive hi-hats. Lots of water, lots of milk. "Milk is grounding," he said. "It coats the nervous system." He tapped his sternum. "My teacher calls it white gold." "Your teacher is either a genius or a dairy lobbyist," I said. He didn't laugh, but his mouth tilted like I'd just attempted a pun. He asked about my drumming. I told him the truth. Rhythm is how I live inside time without fighting it. "My mother says I came out tapping patterns on the NICU blanket." He nodded like I'd just recited scripture. He asked good questions, the kind no one asks unless they actually care. What does it feel like to be perfectly in the pocket? When do I know a night's going to be bad? I told him about the electricity under my skin before a bad set, the way the audience's mood can land on you like weather before you've played a note. He told me every morning he breathes to 96, the year he felt most safe as a child. He said milk helps him remember that feeling. At the other end of the bar, a group of lads ordered tequila shots. One of them shouted, "Who the hell drinks milk?" Calder lifted his glass in salute. The lads hooted, then went back to losing at darts. The bar staff were delighted. I could feel them storing the story, Milk Boy and the drummer. He asked if I wanted to walk. Outside, the night was cool and smelled faintly of citrus peel and wet cardboard. He cradled the glass like it was a candle, while we wandered under strings of festoon lights that made everything look like a party you were about to cry at. "I know it's odd," he said. "I'm not trying to be performative. It's just easy to drink what other people drink, so they don't have to know you. I've always been that person matching. Milk is a way I don't." I thought about the version of me that changes slang depending on who I'm with, the version that can be a mirror when she wants to. I thought about how rare it is to meet someone who's actively resisting that. We reached the river. He took a small notebook from his pocket and wrote something down. He didn't show me. The wind lifted strands of my hair and tried to drag them across the water. Then he offered the glass to me. "Reader, I drank his milk. It was exactly as weird as you think. But it also tasted like a summer I'd nearly forgotten. The part of childhood before shame, before you learn to measure yourself against other people's yardsticks. He watched my face like he was hoping I'd taste what he tasted. I handed it back. We sat on a bench. He told me about the year of panic attacks, emergency room visits, EKGs always normal, the way his mother would hover in the doorway at night and try not to look scared. My body became a smoke alarm with a dead battery, he said, always beeping the wrong message. He found a teacher who told him sensation is just weather. He changed everything he could change. Started breathing like a cello sounds. Started drinking milk because it reminded him of being small and safe. I don't think milk is magic, he said. I think I just like having a ritual that isn't harmful, even if people laugh. I apologized for laughing earlier. He waved it off. It is funny, he said. I look like a cartoon farmer. We watched the headlights ribbon across the bridge. I realized I felt clear. Maybe from the honesty. Maybe from the lactose. At the end of the night, he asked to walk me to my bike. At the rack, he hesitated, then said, "Can I give you something not weird?" He tore a page from his notebook and handed it to me. In neat block letters, "You play like mercy sounds." Underneath, smaller, "Thank you for meeting me where I live." We kissed once, milk breath and peppermint, delicate and improbable. We saw each other a handful of times after that. Once he came to a set, and I played softer than I ever have, as if volume might bruise him. He brought a thermos. After, he handed me a glass on stage, and the crowd cheered like I'd won a bet. I took a sip and bowed. It didn't last. I drink coffee like a religion. He asked me to try a week without. I did, and I hated the person I became without the small spike that gets me upright. He needed the world to be linen. I like my life denim. His name was Dean, and I met him on Tinder. He arrived on time for our date we arranged, which is already rare enough that I mentally gave him a gold star. What I wasn't expecting was the canvas tote he set in the spare chair between us. It looked heavy, like it contained something alive. "I brought someone," he said. Then, with the formality of a magician revealing the sawed-in-half assistant, he reached in and produced a taxidermy gray squirrel. "Meet Bernard," he said. Bernard's glass eyes had the kind of eternal knowledge you find in library basements. His tiny paws were posed mid-plea. There was an actual bow tie affixed under his chin. I said, and my sentences quietly climbed out of my body and went to hide behind the dessert menu. "Bernard is my chaperone," Dean explained while the waiter hovered, caught between horror and customer service. "He used to be my father's." He patted Bernard's rigid head with surprising tenderness. "Dad said he'd watch over me. He was joking at the time, but then he died suddenly, and well, Bernard's sort of continuing education. Now, I'm not unkind. I catalog relics of grief for a living. Lockets with hair, portraits painted after death, letters stained with salt water. But I had never shared bread with a preserved rodent in formalware." The waiter approached with the kind of professionalism that deserves a medal. "Sparkling or still?" he asked, but looked at Bernard when he said it. I chose sparkling because I needed violence in my bubbles. Dean ordered still for Bernard, then asked, earnestly, if they had a booster seat. They did not. Bernard, therefore, sat in a fold of the tote, propped so he could see me. The menu trembled in my hands. My brain was screaming this as a man test. Dean was handsome in the way that implied a good relationship with sunscreen and floss. He asked about my work and listened with the kind of focus that felt almost intimate. Whenever I finished an answer, he turned Bernard slightly toward me, as if to say, "See, she's interesting." "You probably think this is weird," Dean said. I chose a word that wouldn't send me to hell. "Unforgettable." He smiled, relieved. "It's not like I bring him everywhere. Just first dates. If someone can't handle Bernard, maybe they can't handle me." I wondered which me he meant, the one who brings a dead squirrel to dinner, or the one who needs to. The risotto came, perfectly earthy, steam curling upward. Dean ceremonially held a grain to Bernard's mouth. "For luck," he said. I took a polite bite and tried not to laugh into truffle fumes. It was going fine, surreal but fine, until the NSFW curveball. Dean leaned in and, in a low voice, said, "I should tell you, Bernard also protects my romantic energy." I blinked. "Meaning?" "When I'm on a date, I have a tendency to move too fast. Touch too soon. Bernard's presence reminds me to slow down. Be chivalrous." His eyes flicked to my neckline, then back up, not leering, more like someone checking the time. My skin prickled, part flattered, part wary. "So Bernard is like a Victorian chaperone," I said. "Exactly," he said. "Only stuffed." The waiter returned, clearly dying to gossip in the kitchen. We ordered wine, red for me, nothing for Bernard. Dean told me about his father. Camping trips, bad puns, the way he'd invent elaborate stories for the animals they saw. Mid-meal, a little girl at the next table peered over the banquette, wide-eyed. "Is that a squirrel?" Dean turned, teacher gentle. "Yes. This is Bernard. He's dead," she announced, in the blunt way only children and museum labels can manage. Her mother reached to pull her back, mortified, but Dean smiled softly. "He is," he said, "but he still helps us be brave." The girl nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Her mother mouthed sorry. I was starting to soften, against my better judgment. After dinner, we walked. Dean carried Bernard like an heirloom, ridiculous and sacred. On a corner by a florist, he paused. "Can I be even weirder?" "At this point the curve is broken," I said. He set Bernard on a brick ledge beneath a window of geraniums. "My dad told me, if you ever get serious about someone, introduce Bernard to the night, see if the world approves." We stood there, the cool air curling around my legs, people passing and pretending not to stare. Bernard faced the street like a tiny knight. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. "Let's do it properly." I put on my best ceremonial voice. "Bernard, witness, the knight approves." Dean laughed, relief washing over his face. For a moment, it was sweet. And then, as we stood there, I noticed his hand had drifted, not quite touching me, but hovering close to the small of my back. Close enough that I could feel the ghost of his heat. He caught me noticing and smiled, almost sheepishly. "See," he murmured. "Bernard keeps me good." I wasn't sure if it was good that I was suddenly aware of exactly how broad his shoulders were, or bad that part of me wondered what would happen if Bernard wasn't here. We reached the station. He hesitated, as if waiting for permission. "Would you want to carry him?" he asked, holding out Bernard like an offering. I took the squirrel. The fur was softer than I expected, the weight oddly intimate in my arms. And that's when I noticed something. The bow tie wasn't just a bow tie. Pinned to it was a tiny scrap of paper, folded twice. I glanced at Dean. He was checking the train times, and before I could talk myself out of it, I opened it. In small, cramped handwriting. "Bernard says she's not the one. Too fidgety. Talks too much. Smells complicated." My stomach dropped. Dean turned back, smiling, completely unaware I was holding his little insult note. "So," he said, "second date?" I handed Bernard back, careful not to crush him. "I think Bernard and I need to see other people," I said. His smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face. I didn't explain. Just stepped toward my platform, the paper still burning in my palm. On the train, I crumpled it and tossed it in the bin. Watching it disappear between the sliding doors, I thought, people keep the strangest things to make love stay. Sometimes it's a lock of hair. Sometimes it's a stuffed squirrel. And sometimes it's a list of reasons you'll never be enough, hidden in a bow tie. I met him in a plant shop that smelled like wet optimism. You know the kind, walls dense with greenery, the air humid enough to fog your glasses, a playlist that sounds like it's trying to seduce a yoga instructor. I was there to buy a fern. Not because I needed a fern, but because I'd killed my last one, and guilt is a powerful motivator. He was standing by the fiddle leaf figs, wearing a loose cream sweater and looking like the kind of man who could plank for 5 minutes without blinking. His hair had that expensive messiness, not too styled, not too raw, and there was a small silver ring in his left ear. We both reached for the same watering can on a display shelf. Our fingers brushed. I expected him to say sorry or go ahead. Instead, he put one finger to his lips. Not the cute SHHH you give a friend in a library. This was the slow, deliberate, don't frighten the rare bird kind of shush. I laughed automatically. He shushed again, softer this time, eyes narrowing in what might have been reproach or flirtation. Then he smiled. His name was Silas. We ended up talking. Well, he talked in a low voice, and I talked in my normal register until he tilted his head like my decibels were bruising the leaves. At the counter, when I was paying for the replacement fern, he asked if I wanted to get a drink sometime. I said yes because I was curious. And because curiosity, for me, is just foreplay for regret. We met at a speakeasy with velvet booths and menus that used the word unctuous twice. The lighting was low enough that everyone looked a little better than they were. He greeted me with that same finger over his lips. I grinned. "You're keeping the bit going?" His eyes softened, and he leaned in slightly. "Not a bit," he whispered. "Words steal your aura." I blinked. "My aura?" He nodded gravely, and then, I swear on my fern, he shushed the air again, like he was sedating it. The server appeared. I started to say, "Can we get?" But Silas raised a hand, palm hovering just above the table, and breathed out slowly. "Let's settle the field first," he murmured. The server looked at me like, "Are you safe?" I gave a small, nonverbal shrug that meant, possibly not, but let's see where it goes. I ordered a mezcal because smoke felt appropriate. Silas ordered a room temperature water, stirred clockwise 7 times. The server said, "We can do water." Silas closed his eyes, palms up, blessing the tap in his mind. Silas was kind. Earnestly so. His gaze was steady, attentive. He asked questions about my work as a junior architect, about the last thing I'd drawn just for myself. And when I started to answer, he'd let me speak for about 5 words before putting a finger over his lips and shhhing me. Not rudely. Almost tenderly. "Not to stop you," he mouthed. "To protect you." From what, exactly, was unclear. When I laughed, he leaned forward, whispering, "You're hemorrhaging prana." I took a long drink of mezcal, the smoke curling up my nose, trying to anchor myself in something solid. The food arrived, seared scallops, as promised, unctuous. He held his hand above each plate and made a low hum. "Clearing," he said. I took a forkful just to remind myself the earth was still turning. He shushed my fork. "Metal is loud." Halfway through, the NSFW twist arrived, not in action but in implication. Silas set down his fork, looked at me with absolute sincerity, and said, "I should tell you, I practice quiet intimacy." I tilted my head. "Meaning?" "In the bedroom," he whispered, glancing around as though the velvet booths had ears. "No talking. No performative sounds. Noise scatters the arousal field." He said arousal field with the same reverence clergy use for sacrament. My face did the internal math of horror. "So, you shush your partners?" "Only when necessary," he said. 1x groaned too brightly. I had to shhh mid-act to maintain coherence. I coughed, choking on scallop. He reached out, palm hovering over my wrist, not touching, just doing some invisible energy CPR. A table of birthday girls started singing. Silas went rigid. "Excuse me," he whispered and stood. He crossed the room like a man with a mission. And then he shushed them. Not jokingly, not playfully, with the full gravity of a substitute teacher in the 90s. "Mid-dash to you," they faltered into silence. One of them laughed. Someone booed. Silas bowed slightly, then returned to our booth looking serene. "Saved your aura," he said, sitting down. I downed the rest of my mezcal. He shushed the swallow. By this point, I was oscillating between fascination and wanting to run. But there was something magnetic about how unflinching he was in his convictions. He wasn't doing a bit. This was his world, and I was the interloper. When the bill came, he paid in cash, carefully folding the notes in a neat stack. He didn't tip. "Money carries energy," he said, "and I don't want to pass mine on." I slipped a few bills under the tray when he wasn't looking. Outside, the air was cool. He walked me toward the station. Under the sodium lights, he took both my hands and looked earnestly pleased. "You're very loud," he said, like it was the highest compliment. "But we can soften you. I can teach you containment." "Containment," I repeated, already imagining being spooned and shushed for breathing. He asked if I wanted to come back to his place for a quiet cuddle. I pictured lying in his bed while he hovered his palm over my forehead, shushing my REM cycles. I said I had early meetings. He texted the next day, "Had a great time. Noticing tinnitus after our date, could be your laugh." I laughed out loud, alone in my kitchen, gloriously unshushed, and blocked his number. That night, my roommate dragged me to a karaoke bar. I sang off-key for 2 hours straight, loud enough to bruise the air. My aura survived. The first thing I saw was the dog in the scarf. Not in person, in his profile picture. A scruffy mutt with one ear up, wearing a knitted scarf the color of mustard. The caption read, "This is Havelock. He's better at eye contact than I am." The second thing he sent was a question. "Do you think time is a circle?" I typed back, "Only when I'm dating." He laughed in emoji form, which is not the same, but close enough to get me curious. His name was Ezra, and he taught philosophy. That should have been a red flag. I know enough florists who've dated men who turn every argument into a Socratic seminar, but he had kind eyes in every photo, so I let it slide. We agreed to meet at a bistro that does scallops like apologies. Rich, tender, and just a little too expensive for a weeknight. I saw him through the window first. Tall, that kind of tall that makes people in queues glance upward. Handsome, in a way that felt almost accidental. Curls that looked like they'd been sculpted by a breeze. He stood when I came in, said my name like he'd practiced it in the mirror. Zadie. I relaxed exactly 2 degrees. We were 10 minutes into witty banter. He told me about a student who'd turned in an essay entirely composed of memes. I told him about the couple who'd fought over whether ivy was too funeral for their wedding arch, when he excused himself to the restroom. I sipped my drink, texted my best friend that he seemed normal, and mentally congratulated myself for not being on a date with a crypto evangelist for once. And then he came back wearing a wedding dress. Not a subtle one either. Full skirt. Lace bodice. A veil trailing behind him like a sigh. The room reacted in ripples. First, the quiet double take from the couple at the next table. Then the stifled cough laugh from the guy at the bar. The waiter, halfway to our table, froze mid-step, eyes flicking between us like he'd wandered into the wrong dream. I made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a tea kettle deciding to whistle. Ezra held his hands up, palms out. I wanted to see, he said, what it feels like to bring the story I'm not supposed to bring. There's a moment, when something so absurd happens, where your brain flips through its internal Rolodex of possible explanations. Danger, prank, performance, art, mental break. I looked at his face. Not mocking. Earnest. A little terrified. The dress had been altered to fit. The sleeves hugged his arms like they'd been tailored. The bodice sat just right on his frame. Okay, I said slowly, because I am a woman who deals with brides weekly, and also the occasional emotional collapse near the peonies. Tell me the story. 3 months ago, his fiancée had left. Not for another person, he said, but for a feeling she'd lost somewhere along the way. I bought this dress with her, he explained. Not for her, obviously, but with her at the shop while she chose hers. It was a joke. The shop assistant said if I tried something on, she'd give us a discount. So I did. She laughed so hard she cried. It was the happiest I'd ever seen her. His voice didn't crack, but something in it leaned toward an edge. And then she fell out of love with me the way a tide falls, slow, inevitable, no one's fault. He took a breath. I've been trying to date without telling that story. To not make it my name tag. But it is my name tag. And I don't know how to be honest without being this. He gestured to the ocean of satin. The bistro had gone into that hush that happens when a room decides to pretend something is normal. The waiter appeared saintly calm and said, "Would madam like more water?" I laughed, the room exhaled, and Ezra did too. We ate bouillabaisse like nothing was amiss. I told him about the couples who come into my shop and fight over hydrangeas. He told me how he packs grief into labeled boxes. Her toothbrush, the text thread, the sound of her key in the lock. At some point, the dress receded from the center of the scene. He was funny, in a dry way, asking questions that made me think instead of perform. He told me he tells his students that philosophy is just asking better questions about why your chest hurts. When I asked why he kept the dress, he said, because returning it felt like erasing a chapter that had actual sentences. Also, he added, I look incredible. You do, I admitted. You look like you're about to seduce a duke. After dinner, we walked. Ezra in his dress, me in my civvies. People stared, then decided not to. A group of teenagers yelled, Yas Queen, and he curtsied so gracefully that even the pigeons seemed impressed. I asked if the dress was heavy. It feels honest, he said. Which is heavy. We reached the square where couples sit on benches and pretend not to eavesdrop. A street musician began to play at last, because the universe sometimes enjoys being on the nose. May I? He asked, holding out his hand. We danced a little, my fingers finding satin at his waist. The veil brushed my cheek. He smelled faintly of cedar and whatever starch they'd used on the lace. We laughed. He cried a little. Then so did I. We sat. He admitted he was afraid of calcifying into the man who always tells this story. I told him grief is a dress you grow out of without realizing, until one day you try to zip it and it won't. One day you'll put it on, I said, and it'll be comically tight. You'll look in the mirror and think, this was ever mine? He smiled at that, but there was a flicker of something else, doubt, maybe, or the part of him that didn't want to grow out of it yet. At my door he paused. Second date, he said. No dress. Maybe just the veil. Come as the Duke, I said. We went out twice more. No dress, though the veil lived in his backpack like a parachute. On the third date, in my shop, standing in the walk-in flower cooler because the AC had broken, I said, kiss me before the hydrangeas wilt. He did. Our noses went cold. It didn't end with a wedding. It ended the way decent things sometimes do. Kindness, a small ache, gratitude that felt like a full vase. Months later, he texted a photo, the dress hanging in a charity shop window, sunlight making it glow like a ghost with perfect posture. New witness needed, he wrote. I swiped right because his profile said his favorite smell was butter browning. That's basically my religion. His name was Cashin. We met at a trattoria that smelled like garlic butter and ambition. The owner, Marco, kissed my cheeks and immediately tried to upsell me a wine I couldn't afford. Cashin stood when I arrived. He was taller than I'd expected, with dark hair pushed back like he'd just walked in from a wind that wanted to keep him. His blazer was vintage, you could tell by the stitching, and in the pocket was a small, battered book that looked like it had cursed at least one sailor in its time. We ordered quickly, lasagna for him, pappardelle for me, and I was halfway into a story about a croissant collapse in my pastry kitchen when he raised a hand, eyes gleaming like he'd just remembered a secret. Before we break bread, he said, "May I offer something?" I assumed he meant a toast. Reader, he stood, placed one hand lightly on my shoulder, the other palm up to the ceiling fan, and began to chant. Latin. At first it was almost funny. The cadence reminded me of those Gregorian chant remixes that go viral on TikTok for a week. A deep, rolling rhythm that made the air around us feel heavier. People looked over. Marco froze mid-pour at the espresso machine. Benedict Domini nos Cashin intoned. And then he kept going. Minute 2. Minute 5. My pappardelle sat in front of me, steam slowly dying. He wove my name into the chant, which somehow made it worse, like discovering someone had left a love note in the margins of a Bible. The words were beautiful and strange, looping around appetite and restraint and holy hunger. I wasn't sure if he was blessing the food or summoning a very patient demon. By minute 12, my appetite had ghosted me. The meatball on a nearby table had gone stiff like Pompeii. Cashin finally sat, looking blissed out. "I wanted to sanctify our meeting," he said. I speared a noodle in self-defense. "You did," I said, trying to sound gracious and not like I wanted to shovel carbs into my mouth before the next incantation. To his credit, he didn't preach. He asked about pastry school, listened like I was telling him the coordinates to buried treasure. I told him about burns that look like constellations, about waking at 4 a.m. to coax dough into lamination before the city was even awake. He told me he'd been celibate for a year to redirect Eros into study, then glanced at my hands as I mimed kneading dough and murmured, "I am reconsidering." My face went hot. The chemistry, the possibility, was not hypothetical. When I joked about a different kind of benediction later, he put a palm up again. "Only after Vespers," he said, half kidding, half monk. We ate. He told me about a professor who believed every meal should be preceded by silence or song. He asked if I'd ever eaten in total quiet. I told him about the time my oven broke mid-shift, and the entire kitchen went silent as we watched the repair guy dismantle it. By dessert, tiramisu, because I'm not a fool, he reached across the table and took my hand, thumb tracing the edge of my palm. "It's rare," he said softly, "to meet someone who feels lit from within." It was the kind of line that would sound ridiculous from most men. From him, it felt like he'd just put my name in another prayer. We walked by the river. The air was cool, the lights making ribbons on the water. He quoted Catullus, in Latin, then apologized for quoting Catullus because he gets explicit. On a bench, his knee brushed mine. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and he kissed me with devotional care, like my mouth was scripture he was reading for the first time. It might have worked if the world weren't full of meals. On our third date, we were fumbling toward my apartment, both of us already half out of our jackets, when he murmured, "One quick antiphon?" I froze. "Nope." He nodded, like he'd expected that answer, and didn't push. We kissed anyway, slow, unhurried, but I knew. We parted kindly. Weeks later, he texted a photo of a perfect sfogliatella he'd hunted down across the city. "For your benedictions," he wrote. I sent him a voice note pronouncing benedicity correctly, once and for all. Her dating profile was a chaos collage. Courtroom memes, thrifted silk blouses, a photo of her cuddling a chicken like it was a therapy animal. Her bio read, equal parts chaos and consent. Her name was Etta. We matched on a Wednesday night when I was on my third whiskey, decompressing from a case that had eaten my entire week. She messaged first, "Wanna play?" I assumed she meant silly hypotheticals. I did not expect her to follow it up with, "Light roleplay on our date?" I said yes because I'm a public defender, which means I live in a constant state of why not. We met at La Catrina, a loud, warm Mexican place with murals of skeletons drinking margaritas. I spotted her instantly, copper hair piled up like she'd twisted it there mid-walk, a silk blouse the color of a ripe cherry, big gold hoops. She grinned like she'd been waiting to be caught. The host led me to the table. Before I could even sit, Etta slid a manila folder across to me. "Counselor," she said, voice dropping into a register that was equal parts husky and mocking. "My charges." Inside the folder was a 2-page indictment for crimes of passion, typed in courier like she'd borrowed my office computer. Stole my heart, petty larceny. Double-texted, aggravated thirst. Kissed someone in an elevator, public indecency. Looked too good in leather, premeditated hotness. There was even a mugshot, a Polaroid of her, pouting at the camera like a 70s rock groupie. I leaned in. "How do you plead?" She bit her lip, eyes glinting. "Guilty, Your Honor. But I'll need a good defense." The waiter appeared. Without breaking eye contact with me, she said, "We'll need queso. This man is about to work very hard." The waiter blinked, wrote it down, walked away like he'd seen worse. For the next 40 minutes, she stayed in character as Ms. Valentine, a defendant with a tragic backstory involving Prosecco, a rooftop party, and an ex named Blade. She objected to the menu, leading question, Your Honor, addressed the waiter as bailiff, and demanded that I enter into evidence my drink order. I told her it was a mezcal old-fashioned. She smirked like I'd just confessed to a misdemeanor. The queso arrived molten gold. She dipped a chip, pointed it at me like a gavel. "Counselor, I propose a plea deal." "What kind of deal?" Her smile went slow. "Community service, performed at my apartment." I raised an eyebrow. "Duties to include," she continued, "couch-adjacent neck kisses, light restraints, ethical of course, and reading aloud from spicy fanfic." The way she said ethical made me forget how forks worked. I'm a public defender, consent is foreplay to me, so I asked about safe words. She said gavel, without hesitation. We fist-bumped. When I tried to steer the conversation toward her actual life, siblings, what she did for work outside of this, she put a finger to my lips. "Objection," she whispered. "Relevance." She winked so hard I worried she'd sprain something. The queso congealed between us while she whispered, sustained, after every pun I made. The bailiff avoided our table now. Part of me was wildly into it. Her commitment, the way her eyes tracked me like we were improvising a play only we knew the rules to. The other part of me, the one that spends all day trying to get real answers out of people, wanted to know the actual woman behind the costume. When the plates were cleared, she leaned in, elbows on the table, gold hoops swinging. "Counselor Chambers?" There was a beat where I considered saying yes. I imagined her apartment, dim light, the way she'd keep the bit going right up until some moment broke it, and we'd both laugh. Instead, I said, "Ms. Valentine, I move to dismiss for now." Without prejudice. Something flickered in her eyes. Not hurt, exactly, but a shift. She sat back, smiled, and said, "Okay, maybe I'm nervous." That was the first out-of-character thing she'd said all night. I told her I liked her, and that we could do a remand to next week, no costumes. She nodded, serious. "Gavel," she murmured, testing the word. Our second date, she came in jeans and a t-shirt that said "Don't make me use my lawyer voice." No folder. No charges. She was different, still quick, still funny, but more grounded. She told me about her job managing a vintage shop, her cat named Jury, the fact that she'd once broken her ankle falling off a bar while trying to grab a disco ball. We kissed on my stoop, no objections filed. It didn't last past date 3. She liked adrenaline, nights that swung big. I liked Sunday pancakes and the quiet high of winning emotion I thought I'd lose. When we ended it, she mailed me a tiny plastic gavel with a note, "For your desk. Use with care." It sits there now, next to the files that eat my soul. Sometimes, when a client says something so absurd it could be fiction, I tap it once quietly. Most people treat dating apps like a clearance rack, flipping quickly, barely looking, tossing things aside at the first wrinkle. Evan's profile made me stop scrolling. Not because it was flashy, quite the opposite. There were only 3 photos. 1, a slightly shy smile in soft light. 2, him holding a mug on a balcony, steam curling up into cool morning air. 3, kneeling in front of what looked like a bird feeder, head tilted, as if mid-conversation with a sparrow. His bio was short. I like listening to birds. Humans too, if they're interesting. I swiped right. His first message wasn't hey or WID. It was, what's your favorite sound? I sent, the low rumble of a train from inside my apartment. And the sound of someone's laugh when they don't want to laugh but can't help it. He replied, wind through high trees. And the sound of my own heartbeat in my ear after running. At the time I thought, poetic. Later I realized, foreshadowing. We met at a cafe where every plant looked more styled than I did. Tall fiddle-leaf figs by the windows, a moss wall behind the counter, tiny succulents on every table. The air smelled of dark roast and something zesty, lemon oil maybe. He was already there, seated by the window in a navy sweater with slightly worn elbows. He stood when I walked over, revealing that he was taller than I'd guessed from his photos. Hi, he said, voice low and almost careful. We shook hands. His was warm, dry, and held mine for exactly 1 beat longer than necessary. Enough to register, not enough to be awkward. The first 10 minutes were the usual dance, jobs. I'm a junior photo editor at a lifestyle magazine. He's a freelance illustrator. Siblings, he has 1 younger sister. I have no siblings but a cousin who might as well be. Oat versus dairy, oat in coffee, dairy in cheese. Then, out of nowhere, he said, want to see something I'm working on? I braced for an iPad sketch or a design portfolio. Instead, he unlocked his phone, swiped, and turned the screen toward me. A close-up photograph of an ear. It was his ear. The lighting was soft, coming from the left, catching the ridges of the helix and conchus. The detail was startling. You could see faint peach fuzz, the almost invisible whorls of skin. He swiped again. Another close-up. This time the light was cooler, more shadowed, with a faint flush on the upper cartilage. He kept swiping, dozens then hundreds of ear portraits. Morning light, golden hour, black and white, some with water droplets, one with a faint imprint from sleeping on a pillow. I'm documenting micro changes, he explained, eyes on me to gauge my reaction. You can tell when I'm aroused, see how the helix flushes? And when I'm stressed, the lobe tightens. I leaned closer to the screen despite myself. The photos were surprisingly beautiful. Tactile, intimate, but still all ears. All his. After a breakup, I decided to turn inward, he said. Literally. Everyone photographs their face. Ears are honest. They don't know how to pose. He showed me a set titled After Running, another called Listening to SZA, and one labeled NSFW, which was just his ear, slightly redder. I don't post those, he said, cheeks coloring in stereo with the photo. I asked if he photographed other people's ears. He looked startled, even defensive. No. Too invasive. The irony sat between us, sipping a cappuccino. The NSFW undercurrent arrived when he said, we should do a joint project. Your ear, my ear. Side by side. A diptych called confluence. I raised an eyebrow. And how would we generate the aftershots? His voice dropped, conspiratorial. We could kiss, then document the auricular aftermath. I laughed, partly because it was absurd, partly because his gaze had gone intent in a way that made my skin warm. We finished our drinks and walked out into the cool afternoon. The streets smelled faintly of rain. He noticed everything, a sparrow's nest tucked into a shop sign, the way I kept tucking my hair behind my ear when I talked. We wandered toward the park. The gravel paths crunched underfoot. At a corner under a busted street lamp, he stopped. Looked at me, not at my mouth, but at the side of my face. Can I? He asked. I nodded. The kiss was soft, unhurried. When he pulled back, he studied me like I was a rare specimen. Your tragus just did a thing, he murmured. I laughed, and he smiled like I'd just given him a gift. Over the next 3 weeks, we saw each other often. The ear project became a running joke. Sometimes he'd send me a photo and I'd text back mock critiques. Strong composition, but the lobe feels unmotivated. He was deliberate in everything. The way he touched my arm when making a point, the way he brushed my hair back before kissing me. But the documenting never stopped. When I was sad, he wanted to photograph the tear streaks. When I was flushed from laughing, he wanted to capture the heat aura. Sometimes I wanted him to just be there in the moment, not frame it for later. One night, we planned to cook together. I was chopping garlic when I felt him step behind me, his chest warm against my back, hand resting lightly on my hip. My body leaned into him instinctively. Then, the click of his phone's camera. I turned, knife still in hand. There was steam curling past your lobe, he said, eyes bright. It was perfect. I set the knife down. Evan, maybe not right now. His brow furrowed. But this is the whole point. Capturing the truth of a moment. Sometimes the truth is just living it, I said. He looked at me like I'd told him the sun didn't rise in the east. We broke up a week later. It was mutual, gentle. He said he needed someone who understood the project as an extension of intimacy. I said I needed someone who could close the gallery app and just look at me. Before we parted, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a print of my ear in late afternoon light, hair tucked back, skin glowing. It's one of my favorites, he said. I keep it in a drawer. Sometimes I take it out and think, parts of us bloom under attention, parts of us need the dark. And yes, my tragus really is a star. Her first message said, I bring references. I thought she meant friends who could vouch for her, or maybe glowing Yelp reviews if she was joking. I didn't think she meant it literally. Her name was River. Yes, like the noun, and she had eyebrows that could win arguments on their own. Her profile pictures had that curated chaos. Photos of her on mountaintops, in thrift stores, holding a loaf of bread like a newborn. We matched on a Thursday afternoon. She suggested a pub with fairy lights strung everywhere and a carpet that looked like it had survived several wars. I got there first, ordered a pint, and was busy pretending to read the specials board when she walked in. She was shorter than I expected, wearing a green dress and boots that had definitely seen real mud. She smiled when she spotted me, warm, easy, and then stepped aside to gesture at the man following her in. This is Gareth, she said, like she was introducing an appetizer. My landlord. I blinked. Gareth was in his 50s, graying at the temples, and carrying a clipboard like it had been surgically attached. Evening, he said, shaking my hand with the grim professionalism of someone who has replaced a lot of boilers. They sat opposite me, River in the middle, Gareth on the edge. He flipped the clipboard toward me. The first page read, Prospective Partner Assessment. Columns labeled income stability, noise tolerance, shower duration, mold awareness, communication during conflict. My soul briefly left my body and hovered by the dartboard. River looked apologetic but unyielding. I've had awful relationships, she said. Thought I'd outsource the first pass screening to someone who knows leases. Gareth nodded like a judge. We'll just be doing a quick suitability check. The questions started simple. Occupation? UX research, I said. Employment length? 3 years at the same company. He made a small mark. Then, conflict style? Direct but not aggressive, I said. River's eyes flicked to me, like she was mentally underlining that. Then we hit the intimacy logistics section. Frequency expectations? Gareth asked, pen poised. I blinked. That's between me and River, isn't it? He looked at me over the clipboard. It's relevant to compatibility. River sipped her beer like this was the most normal thing in the world. 2 to 3 times a week? I offered, feeling like I'd just given a deposition. Preferred hours? Gareth asked. River murmured, I'm a morning person, and he wrote AM. Noise level? I stared at the table. I adapt. He wrote something down and moved on to soundproofing experience and tolerance for accidental lockouts. The whole time, River was watching me with this half smile, like she was testing if I'd bolt. We ordered food. The pub's fish and chips arrived in baskets lined with fake newsprint. Gareth asked if I minded if he ate too. Apparently the interview was hungry work. Between bites, he asked about boundary agreements with ex-tenants. River corrected him. Partners. Pets? None, I said. Potential for future cat? River's eyes lit up. I do want a cat named Crumbs. I could feel myself softening despite the absurdity. Part of me admired the audacity. I'm a researcher. I live for frameworks. And there was something oddly comforting about someone laying it all out, even if that someone was a middle-aged man with a clipboard. I asked if I could pose questions back. River brightened. Of course. So I took the clipboard and asked about her conflict style. How she apologizes. How she likes to be comforted. Gareth looked oddly proud, like we were his best tenants yet. When the plates were cleared, Gareth stood. Provisional approval, he said. 6-month trial. Break clause at 3 if either party fails to take out the bins. He left us with a carbon copy of the form. River exhaled. I know it's weird, she said. My last ex gaslit me so hard I now outsource my gut. Gareth's seen me at my worst. I told her it was the strangest thing I'd ever liked. She laughed, and for a moment, the table felt lighter. We dated for 5 months. Gareth never reappeared, except once when he came to fix a leaky tap and made me a cup of tea while he waited for the sealant to set. River and I fought about normal things, wet towels on the bed, her habit of triple booking weekends. The intimacy was good, though. She liked to curl against me in the mornings, tracing lazy shapes on my chest. She teased that Gareth would have approved of my maintenance skills. When we broke up, mutual bittersweet, we wrote a joint end-of-tenancy letter in Google Docs. We listed what we'd keep, my espresso machine, and what we'd return, each other's hoodies. Gareth emailed, deposit returned in full. It felt, bizarrely, like closure. He was beautiful in the way bad decisions are, all sharp edges and the faint hum of trouble. Name, Orion. We matched while I was halfway through rage baking a batch of blondies. His opening line, "You look like trouble in the best way." I replied, "You look like trouble in the worst way." He sent a winking emoji. I should have run. Instead, we set a date for Thursday night at a burger joint that brines its pickles like it's a religion. I got there first and grabbed a booth. It smelled like seared beef, fryer oil, and onion rings, the kind of scent that sticks to your hair and your soul. Orion strolled in 5 minutes later. In person, he was even more distracting, tall, lean, with that loose-hipped walk that says I don't hurry for anyone. His black t-shirt fit like it had been made for him, and his eyes did that thing where they scan you once, slow, before locking on your face. He slid into the booth across from me, grinning. "Bia," he said like he was testing the weight of my name. We talked jobs. I'm a junior dentist. He does creative direction for a clothing brand. Favorite films, travel dreams. He was charming in that slightly performative way that makes you feel like you're in a scene. When the waiter came, I ordered my usual, double cheeseburger, extra pickles, fries. Orion waved the menu away. "Not hungry," he said, leaning back like a billboard for mayhem. Food arrived, glorious and steaming. I picked up a fry and was halfway to my mouth when he said, "Can I have one?" "Take a few," I said, generous because flirtation makes me communal. He plucked one from the basket. Ate it. Then, without breaking eye contact, leaned forward and licked the ends of the rest. Slowly. I froze. He sat back, satisfied. "Claiming," he said. My brain was a fireworks factory at midnight. "Did you just? So no one else takes them," he added, casual as you please. "That's..." I searched for a word that wasn't gross. "Territorial." He smirked. "That too." The way he said it, low, almost teasing, made a part of my brain go, okay, so this is a kink thing. I put the fry in my hand down. "Orion, if you wanted to play that game, maybe you should have asked first." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't like being marked?" "That depends on the context," I said, matching his tone. "And the consent." He grinned. "Consider this a preview." I took a sip of my drink to keep from saying preview of what, exactly. We debated lightly but with real edges, about consent, hygiene, kink versus basic manners. He admitted he liked bratty, possessive play. I said that's fine when everyone's agreed. He said, "I agree," as if that fixed it retroactively. I said, "Nope." He looked amused rather than chastened. "Can I at least lick the pickles?" I stared at him like I was on The Office. The waiter came by to ask if everything was okay. I smiled sweetly and said, "Could we get another order of fries, please?" When they arrived, I slid them to my side of the table and ate one slowly, making eye contact the whole time. Then I pushed the rest to the far edge. "You can have those. Lick them, marry them, start a preschool with them, your call." He chuckled, but there was a flicker of something. Embarrassment? Maybe. He picked up a fry, this time eating it like a normal human. "I misread you," he said. "I like big gestures." "Big gestures are fine," I said, "when they're for both people." We finished eating in a strange détente. Conversation drifted to music, travel, favorite terrible movies. He was easy to talk to when his tongue wasn't on my food. When the bill came, he insisted on paying. Outside, the night was warm, smelling faintly of grilled meat and city dust. He walked me to my car, hands in his pockets. "So second date?" I hesitated. "Let me think about it." He smiled like he already knew the answer he wanted. That night, he texted, "I'll keep my tongue to myself next time." I replied, appreciated. We didn't go out again. Back at the clinic the next day, I told my hygienist. She laughed so hard she fogged her face shield. "At least he's into flossing," she said. That night, I rage-baked blondies. I did not share. He messaged me the way a man might tap a glass aquarium. Softly, experimentally, like testing the boundary between worlds. His profile picture was him in a linen shirt, sitting cross-legged on a dock, gazing out at water the color of steel. His bio read, "Practicing presence. Trying silence for a month." I stared at it longer than I should have, trying to decide if it was pretentious or intriguing. I wrote back, "Most men I date are already trying silence, usually after I ask, so what are you looking for?" He sent a smiling face, that bland emoji shrug of modern romance. And then, "Would you be open to a silent date?" I said yes because I am 28 and 2 online, because my therapist once told me, try discomfort in safe containers, and because part of me is a moth for the flames of weird experiments. A cafe at 6 p.m. counts as a container. We chose a place with mismatched chairs, low golden light, and the kind of hanging plants that made you feel like you're on a botanical honeymoon. He said he'd bring a journal to make it intentional. In my head I pictured bullet journaling, washi tape, maybe a pen with a cartoon animal topper. What I didn't picture was a leather-bound tome thick as a family Bible, which is exactly what he set down on the table like an extra guest. He was handsome in the mild way that gets you better tables without anyone quite knowing why. Well-combed hair, jawline like a clean page, eyes soft but watchful. Linen shirt, buttoned just low enough that my gaze dipped there once, involuntarily. His mouth looked like it knew about herbal tea and slow mornings. He lifted one finger in greeting, the gesture so deliberate it almost felt like a blessing, then spread his hands, palms up, and nodded. The ceremony of it made me want to bow or giggle. I did neither. We ordered by pointing at the menu. I pointed to an oat latte, he to a black tea. The barista looked at us like she was wondering if she'd been drafted into a silent film. He opened the leather journal and wrote in looping script, then turned it to me. "Thank you for consenting to this experiment. How is your breath?" I laughed, a quick, startled burst, and he smiled but pressed a finger to his lips. My laugh folded into the steam of my cup. I reached for the pen to answer, but he slid it back toward himself with the gentleness you'd use to stop a toddler from touching a hot stove. He scribbled again. "The world is too loud. Let's see what remains when we stop trying to fill it." I hated that it was kind of beautiful, and I hated that my chest tightened a little in recognition. We sat. We drank. Someone behind us coaxed milk through an espresso machine until it screamed like a gull fighting over chips. I tried to look graceful while sipping, aware of every muscle in my face. He looked at me the way you listen to rain, attention without urgency. 7 minutes in, I felt oddly tender. 10 minutes in, bored. 15 minutes in, panicked. My brain staged a mutiny. Should I smile? Too much smiling is creepy. Should I nod? Nodding feels like kindergarten teacher energy. Should I look away to be mysterious? That's what catfish do. What are my hands doing? Why are my shoulders in my ears? Oh God, does he think my blinking pattern is needy? He wrote again, turned the journal toward me. "Can I observe you?" He'd already ticked a small box next to the question, as if consent was assumed. Underneath, "Your left ear is higher than your right. Your right eye scans the room. Your left foot keeps time with the grinder. You carry your body like you owe it an apology." Every past version of me furrowed her brow at once. I wanted to argue, to say I carry my body like someone who keeps the lights on, like someone who does burpees at 7 a.m. to beat the cruel math of the day. But the rules were the rules, so I sipped my latte, tried absurdly to lower my left ear. He wrote more. "You're funny when you're gagged by choice." He underlined funny. "I like the way you place your cup down. You land it softly like it might startle." I wasn't sure if I felt seen or pinned. Maybe both. He reached for the sugar. With the solemnity of communion, he stirred his tea exactly 7 times. I counted. He set the spoon on the saucer, parallel, like aligning a compass to true north. He folded a napkin into a perfect rectangle and slipped it beneath the cup to save the wood from a ring. It wasn't smug, just the behavior of someone with time to spare. "Do you want to walk?" He wrote. We walked. The city evening was damp and humming. A bus sighed. A dog trotted past in a raincoat like a tiny municipal worker. We were a peculiar parade, him, his leather journal, and me, narrating everything in my head. He stopped at a mural, women with bright oranges for heads, eyes replaced by spirals of rind. He wrote, "What would you call this?" He handed me the pen this time like a relay baton. "Citrus witnesses," I wrote. His smile spread until his mouth looked like a sail catching wind. "Yes," he wrote. We moved again, exchanging questions and answers in the journal. I learned he worked in UX design and believed door handles should teach you how to open them by shape alone. I learned he used to talk too much when anxious, until he tried a week of vows and felt his tongue reset. I learned he could laugh without sound, shoulders shaking, eyes alight. At the riverside, he wrote, "What are you proud of that you rarely say out loud?" My hands buzzed as I wrote. I paid my mum's debt last year. Quietly. He read it, nodded, eyes soft. Wrote, "Thank you for saying that somewhere, even if it's here." Something warm bloomed low in my stomach. Not sexual exactly, but close to it. The tiny ache of being understood. But somewhere between that and the train station, I noticed something. His writing pace had shifted. The tilt of his pen was sharper, faster. His mouth twitched once, twice. And when he angled the journal away from me, I caught a glimpse, not of looping poetic lines, but of short, jagged sentences. We stopped at a crossing. He was scribbling again, the page shielded with his hand. My curiosity, already pacing like a caged animal, shoved my patience out of the way. "Let me see," I said. My voice startled both of us, the first words I'd spoken in over an hour. He shook his head, smiling faintly, like I was a child asking for candy before dinner. I reached out before I could talk myself down. My fingers closed on the journal, his grip tightened, but I yanked. The leather cover was warm from his hands. The paper smelled faintly of tea and ink. And there it was, row after row of observations, but not the gentle, monkish ones from before. She blinks too much. Probably nervous or lying. Laugh is too loud for her face. Posture like a question mark. Maybe insecure. Neck blotches when she's trying too hard. I bet she's bad in bed, too self-conscious. Pretty, but in a way that will age badly. It went on, and on. I felt heat flood my cheeks, my chest, my scalp. Not lust this time. Anger so sharp it was almost clean. I looked up at him. He was watching me, unreadable. Is this what the experiment was about? My voice shook. He didn't answer. Maybe he thought silence would save him now too. I shoved the journal back into his chest, hard enough that he stumbled a half step. "You could have just unmatched me," I said. I turned and walked fast, the city swallowing me in its noise. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't look. My ex and I broke up around 4 months ago, after dating for a little over a year. She was the one who broke up with me, but at the time I agreed that it was for the best, so we ended things on good terms. We're pretty chill now, and we have mutual friends, so we often all hang out together. So things between us are chill and friendly. I work at a research lab at my university, and I just recently landed the position after a pretty damn long and competitive application/interviewing process. I met my boss, who's a grad student, and we became buddies pretty fast. He's a really nice and funny dude that knows what he's doing. I see him every day since me and 2 other undergrads work under him and help with his research while he helps use with our own. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and I see on my ex's Snapchat story a fucking picture of my boss with a heart emoji. I'm shocked as fuck, so I reply to her story asking her who her new boy is, and sure enough she tells me she's dating my boss. I feign happiness for her, and I don't tell her that he's my boss, or that I know him in any way. But damn, I felt like someone just stabbed me in the heart. Although I didn't have feelings for after our breakup, but after seeing her story, I was just hit with a pang of jealousy. Maybe it's because he's a major step up from me. I'm a poor, disorganized undergrad, and then he's a successful, young talent who has his shit together. The next day at work I'm basically on edge the whole day. I would look at my boss, remember that he's dating my ex, and just feel so uncomfortable. The rest of the week was like that too. I stopped joking around with him, and kind of just stopped talking in general to him. Now I dread seeing him every day because the fact that he's my boss, so he orders me around, just makes me feel shittier and more below him. He's got the girl and I've got no one. I still love my job though, and I worked so hard to get it, so I'm not planning on leaving. I also feel like a shitty person since my boss has been nothing less of nice and is honestly a great guy. Now I just feel like I should have tried harder in our relationship because damn, she was pretty perfect in every way, and I just let his all slip through. The other day, she came over to have lunch with him during his lunch break, and I saw them laughing together, and yeah, another wave of sadness and jealousy. What do I even do now? How do I stop feeling like this? How should I normalize the situation at work? I've been trying to focus on myself and my work and not care about my ex and my boss who's dating her. It worked pretty well. I started a painting, and I'm pretty close to finishing it, and I impressed my boss, the professor who owns the lab, not the one dating my ex, by staying late for 2 days in a row to finish a really difficult experiment. During our lab meeting, my boss shouted me out in front of the entire lab and said he was really impressed by my hard work and dedication. That felt good. As for the situation with my boss and my ex, he found out. Like I mentioned in my previous post, when my ex told me who her new boyfriend was, I didn't mention that he was my boss, so neither of them knew. 2 days ago, my boss and us, 2 other undergrads, were in a conference room discussing a paper when my ex came in. She came to drop off my boss's wallet that I think he forgot or something. Anyway, she saw me, did a double take and went, "Jayaki?" She was definitely super surprised and caught off guard, and her boss was already like, "WTF?" So I was just like, Sarah." She shot me another shocked wide-eyed look and left. Suffice to say, the rest of the meeting was pretty awkward. The next day, it was obvious that my boss now knew our history. Things just turned so awkward. Like he didn't know how to act around me anymore, and what to say. Now we're both awkward around each other. He's still nice and all, but things are just uncomfortable between us two now. It's not his fault though. I think that things will get better between the two of us, but as of right now, I actually feel kind of relieved that he now knows. Something about how both of us now don't know how to act, and what to do kind of makes me feel reassured. Sarah also called me the night that she found out I worked there, but I missed her call and forgot to call back. It's good though, I've been trying to think of her less and distance myself a bit. But if things continue to remain really awkward to the point where both of our work is affected, I'll consider talking to my boss about switching me to work under another grad student instead. But yeah, that's about all. Again, thanks for the help, guys. I met Danielle on a dating app, and we immediately hit it off. Conversation was super easy for us, so we swapped numbers and spent the next 2 weeks texting and talking on the phone. I explained early on that I want to take my time, because not only am I looking for something serious, but also have work commitments the next few months. I work in tech product sales, which can be very busy, and also involve me leaving the city for a few days at a time. She said she understood, and was also looking for something long-term. Great. We met the weekend before Valentine's, and had a nice restaurant date following by dessert and coffee. We finished with a kiss, and I walked her back to her car. It was definitely the best date I've been on since my last relationship. The next day I called her to say I was looking forward to seeing her again, and would plan something when I get back. I live in a major North American city, and from the 15th to 17th I was booked 3 hours away for on-site client meetings. I told her about this and let her know we'd keep in touch. On the Friday I'm due to get back, I get a message from a close female friend asking who I pissed off. I have no clue what she's talking about. She sends me a screenshot of my photo on what looks like a FB page, and tells me it's a private group where women call out men for cheating. It's called Are We Dating the Same Guy? And this particular group is just for people from my city. In the screenshot, multiple people are posting under my picture with mostly harmless comments like, "Oh, I went on a date with him years ago, he was okay." But there were others like "PM me for the tea," and one woman said, "He's an angry asshole, stay away for your safety." Because it's FB, I instantly recognized her name as someone I went on a date with last summer, who I had to block after she repeatedly tried to sell me her cat. Absolute lunatic. A few things about me. I am single, I have never been married, and my last relationship was over a year ago. I am very selective, and Danielle was the first date I'd been on since the end of summer. I am also a very private person. I don't use social media, and I don't kiss and tell. The fact that my photo is on this site is mortifying. What makes matters worse is when I got home I started getting texts from a bunch of other people I know, either laughing at me or calling me a womanizer. As of now I'm aware that several female friends have seen it, one coworker, my sister, and a woman I know who lives in the same building as me that excitedly grabbed me when I was leaving this morning to tell me, "I saw you on that Facebook group." Apparently it's a lot more popular than I realized. There's only one person who would have the motivation to do this, so I called Danielle on the weekend and asked her. Initially she denied it, but after some prodding that flipped to apparently her friend posting it. Why? Because a few of them had gotten tipsy together on Valentine's, as they're all single. My name came up after her friends asked why she wasn't with me that night after the great date she'd told them about. Apparently me not being around as I was leaving early the next morning for work was suspicious, as was the fact we'd been talking for multiple weeks, but she'd never seen my place. She gave them a pic I used on the dating app, and one of them posted it. She told me she was sorry, but that I seemed too good to be true. Her last relationship ended due to cheating, and she wanted to make sure I wasn't married or in a relationship. I told her I needed some time to think and would be in touch. That was Saturday. We've been silent until today, where I woke up to dozens of MSGs from her saying things along the lines of, "I'm so sorry / I'm so angry with myself for this," and then the real truth. It was her that posted it. She wanted to come completely clean and apologized for lying, telling me she panicked when I confronted her, but she wants it all out now. She sent me screenshots, unprovoked, of the PM conversations she was having with women in the group about me. Aside from the one head case I mentioned earlier, there was nothing accusatory, but what I couldn't get over was how they were discussing me in such an open manner. It had nothing to do with whether I was single or cheating. It was stuff like, he took me to this restaurant, he drives this kind of car, this is what he's like in bed, this is what his place is like, this is how much money I think he makes. I would never talk about exes or people I've dated like that. And if a guy tried to talk to me about Danielle like that, I'd think he was a fucking weirdo and tell him to stop. My two closest female friends are divided on this, so I'm here for advice. One thinks that women need to protect themselves against predators and violence, and groups like this are necessary. The other is angry on my behalf because the presumption of men being posted to that group are that they're cheaters or sketchy. Otherwise, why would anyone even post them there? I really don't know what to do next. I've never had to deal with anything remotely like this before. I liked Danielle, but it was one date. She also lied to me about it at first. This seems like a headache, and we've never even had sex yet. Is she going to get even more paranoid after that? It doesn't feel like we're compatible. This feels like the past 3 weeks of us talking have been one massive waste, and that actually stings because she's the first person I've really liked since my ex. Didn't happen today, but quite a while ago. Just heard this Carl Pilkington thing about something similar, and remembered this. Anyhow, back then, I was feeling a bit lonely and was going through a bit of a dry spell. I matched with a few bots and generally uninteresting people, some of whom were so dumb, I actually felt like doing anything sexual with them might be considered statutory rape. At some point, however, I matched up with this incredibly stunning woman, who definitely piqued my interest, for she was both beautiful and intelligent. She also had a great speaking voice, and I was definitely keen on seeing how far this could go. Maybe even relationship material, who knows? I discovered that she was really into yoga and everything else that comes with a yogi's lifestyle. The only reason that this is worth mentioning is because she thought I looked like I was into yoga as well, but I was not, although at the time I was seriously considering giving it a shot. We go on back and forth mostly about yoga and her lifestyle, which was fascinating to me. She would constantly make remarks about how impressed she was that I never asked her anything sexual, and told me all of her horror stories with other dudes. The reality is, I find it really weird and awkward trying to ask girls for sexual favors on the internet. I don't know why, but I'm far smoother with this sort of thing in person. Either way, we set a date to meet, and all was well. If anything sexual were to happen, it would be then. 2 days before we were set to meet, completely out of the blue, she sends me a photo of her lying in her underwear, with a bit of a tease situation going on. Then she sends me a video of her lying on her tummy. Being the awkward F I was, I had no idea how to react to that message and thought that she'd shown me some, so I shall do the same? I do a similar thing in photo form, showing her a bit of my behind mostly as a joke, but secretly hoping she'd enjoy that and send some more, or maybe get a looking forward to meeting you thing. Without a word, she blocks me off of everything, and that was the end of that. So to sum up, I meet someone cool on Tinder and plan to meet her. She showed me her ass 2 days prior. I felt compelled to do the same and never heard back from them anymore. I'm glad this was amusing to many of you. It's cool to see that all the dudes think this is a huge no-no, but the girls totally dig my response. It's quite an interesting twist, I have to say. Just wanted to clarify a few things. I did send her a compliment, and she responded to the compliment. The fuck up was really me feeling weird afterwards for not sending something back. Keep in mind, I was completely new to this online dating malarkey. It was definitely meant for me because of the above, but also, she sent me a voice note on WhatsApp saying something about them being a little gift. I'm also fairly certain she was a real person. We spoke on the phone a few times and sent each other photos of us doing the same stuff. Like if I said I was going shopping, she'd send me a cute photo of her unpacking her groceries or whatever. Also, again, this happened a long time ago. I'm quite happily married at the moment, so I'm not depressed because she didn't want my dick. Was I confused? Sure, but I moved on fairly quick. You can stop sending me aggro PMs about being a bitch for still hanging on to this thing. It's just a funny story. Enjoy it, or check out something else. Not being big in the club, party, or dance scene, I tend to use online sites to get dates. Part of the problem is since I live in the middle of nowhere, every person I'd even consider dating is at least an hour drive away. Anyway, onto the story. So I met the girl on the online site. Her profile was nice. Her pictures were neat. She had a little extra meat to her, but I'm perfectly alright with that. We started messaging, found out she was a gamer, she liked science-wise stuff, had a quirky sense of humor, and we messaged several times a day for about a month. When we finally decided to meet up, we decided on going to a fancy Asian restaurant that was halfway, so neither one of us needed to drive too far, which was my idea because I like being practical, especially when I was having job trouble at the moment. Well, when I arrived, I noticed a few details. Her pictures did not do her justice. Namely that she was easily about 350 to 400 pounds plus. She was wearing a skimpy outfit that had her fat rolls pouring over the edges. She had high heels on which I could not comprehend how they functioned on account of the law of physics. She must not have practiced putting makeup on in a long time, because she looked similar to a clown. And when she spoke, oh God. I understand everyone has their way of speaking. I know of accents, speech impediments, and vernacular, but she spoke in a way similar to Harold Green from the Red Green Show. Whatever, this is all superficial, and not being one to judge too harshly, and I am not one to turn down a potential friend. I decided to just go with it, knowing I had no interest in pursuing anything beyond friendship. Sorry, not a chubby chaser. So we go in, and the first thing I notice is when the ladies at front seat their eyes go wide. They look at each other and begin to speak rapidly in Cantonese/Mandarin before the one at the desk greets us and takes us to our seats with only one menu. That was a red flag because my date didn't have one herself. Our conversations weren't anywhere near as complex or interesting as they were online, which was another flag because she seemed to not grasp the basic topics we covered, such as games, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, gardening, or even local politics. I would chalk it up as anxiety, but no, she had no trouble talking. She just had no idea about any of these things. Then she decided to start talking about sex. Yeah, no. I don't mind talking about anything really, but I don't want to hear about the amount of sex you've had, how you like your sex, what your last boyfriend did to you, your masturbation techniques, your sex toys, and just what you want to do to me. Not only is that rather inappropriate first date conversation topic, also EW. Finally, to save me from a topic that churned my stomach, the food arrived. And I saw just why she didn't need a menu. She pretty much ordered the entire goddamn thing plus several alcoholic beverages versus my soup, steamed rice, and Hunan pork dish. She proceeded to just a bit of everything, shove it on her plate, and then shove it in her mouth, showing the table manners of a hyperactive bonobo, all while trying to keep up the previous topic of conversation that I constantly tried to deviate from to something, anything, that wasn't an insult to my senses but to no avail. The night continued in this disgusting, sauce-covered trend for a few hours until she had basically eaten everything she ordered and had some of mine as well. The bill came to a little over $200, which I, of course, had to cover because she magically forgot any of her money. Sorry if it seems rude, but if someone wants to get some extremely expensive stuff and I inform them beforehand that I don't have a lot of money, I expect them to chip in even a little bit. On our way out, she grabbed my arm, tried to pull me close, and whispered how she wanted me, and wanted me to come back to her place. I placed my hand on hers, smiled gently, and said no. Now please let go of my arm. Luckily she did, and so I gave her an extremely awkward hug, told her I was going home, and promptly jumped in my car and got the hell out of there. Last message I got from her, about an hour after I got home, was asking why I didn't find her attractive, and why I was such a pansy to not fuck her on the first date. I simply said, I would have nothing against continuing our conversations online, but I don't think we had much chemistry. Went out with a few friends to grab some wings and beer after a long week of work. One of my buddies GFs who I've known for years shows up with a few friends, mostly people I've met before, but one chick I haven't met, extremely good looking, 5'9" blonde. Honestly, thought she would probably be a ditz by looking at her, but she wasn't at all. We instantly hit it off, and she starts talking about some sitcoms I've been obsessed with lately that aren't too popular among my group of friends, Larry Sanders and News Radio. Takes one sniff of my scotch and tells me what it is cracking these big jokes and making everyone we were with piss their pants. Honestly, chick was awesome. Next thing I know, we're headed back to my place both extremely drunk. So I have no clue what's happening at all. We finally get to my apartment, she dashes for my kitchen, and next thing I know she's cranking out omelets. Then all of a sudden, she sees my comp and throws on some stand-up, which was beyond hysterical. So I'm just thinking holy ____, this chick is amazing. After that we watched stand-up for about an hour and ate this breakfast she cooked at 3 a.m. and then she leaves with just a big hug. Next day, I wake up with the hangover from hell. The type of hangover that as soon as you open your eyes you know you're screwed. Stumble into my shower, and in the haze of the water over my head I keep hearing my phone go off. Don't think anything of it. Next thing I know my apartment buzzer goes off. Still don't think anything of it. Then both keep going off. I decide to check my apartment buzzer first. I hear a female voice. Why aren't you picking up my calls? I ask who is it? It's the chick from last night. I then look at my phone and see 17 missed calls from a number I don't know. I call it back, it's her. I buzz her in and she comes upstairs and I'm assuming she just left something here. But she said, "You said you were free today, thought we could hang out." I'm thinking to myself, did I? So I just go along with it. We talk for a while about a bunch of random stuff, then watch some TV. I then tell her I have a bunch of errands to do and I think I want to take a nap, assuming she'd leave. She said, "Oh cool, I'll come with you," so literally came with me to get a haircut, pick up my dry cleaning, go food shopping. And throughout all of this she's borderline silent, completely diff than the night before. We then finally get back to my place, and then she says she's tired and going to take a nap. I'm assuming she'd leave, but nope, she crashes on my couch. I then decide to take a nap and try and process all of this. I wake up and she's staring at me. I realize it's been almost a 3-hour nap. She says to me, "You're beautiful when you sleep." I start nervously laughing, and then get up and head to my bathroom to throw some water on my face. I go back to my living room and she's made mac and cheese with cold cuts in it. Literally my favorite meal. I didn't remember telling her this, and I asked her how she knew. She called my best friend, who she knows, and asked. I'm thinking, okay, this is creepy, but kinda awesome. She finally leaves after another movie, with just a peck on the cheek. Next a.m., I hear my door open. I immediately think it's a break and enter as the only people who have my keys are my parents, and I grab my lacrosse stick under my bed and wait in my bedroom. I peek out from a crack in my door to look. It's her. I walk out and ask her how she got in. She explained to me she grabbed my keys and had a copy made down the block when I was napping yesterday. So I didn't have to do it for her. I then see she has a huge suitcase next to her, and she unzips and starts unpacking. Well, if we're going out, I'm leaving some stuff here. I say, "Whoa, I think we're taking this a little too quick." She immediately bursts into tears and starts screaming at me. "I am perfect for you," over and over again, packs up, and then runs out of my apartment slamming doors. I have no clue what's going on or where my keys are. I try to block the whole weekend out of my head, and then the next day I wake up to go to work. She's outside of my apartment at 6:30 a.m. waiting for me. I'm freaked out and try and talk to her. She barely says a word besides, "I'm sorry." We walk to the end of my block, and then she jumps in a cab without a word. Didn't hear from her at all Monday. I give a mutual friend a call and tell her what happened over the weekend, and she was shocked and said this chick isn't like this at all. Tuesday rolls around. I have 5 missed calls at work from a number I didn't know. It's her calling from her work line. Kept leaving messages to call her back. Finally call her back, and she's just breathing on the other line. Really freaked out by this and say, "Maybe it's best we don't talk to each other anymore." I then hear her cry and she hangs up. I'm thinking, okay, this is finally done with. I go to a friend's birthday that Friday. She's there. My best friend comes up to me and said, "Hey, I didn't know you were going out with ______." Well, that was news to me. I had no idea either. Asked him why did he hear this. Pointed right at the chick, and she was there and she waved at me and winked. He said she was telling everyone that night she thinks, "You're gonna get married to each other." I'm beyond freaked out. I tell my buddy everything that happened, and we both decided to leave and told my friend whose birthday it was we'll take him out for drinks another day. I go home that night. She's sitting on my couch. She immediately yells at me, "Why did you tell people we weren't going out?" I ask her to leave and pull out my phone and told her I was going to text the cops. She cries and then leaves without saying a word. Immediately called our mutual friend and told her what happened, and she's freaked out for me. She calls the insane chick's parents. Finds out this happened one other time in college. She had a stalking problem with a guy. Said her parents know she still calls him from time to time. Next day I changed my locks. Haven't heard from her in about 2 weeks now. Scared she'll pop up out of nowhere again. A couple weeks ago I decided I wanted to surprise my wife with a kid-free night out. My parents live about an hour and a half away from us, and I arranged for the kids to stay with them for the weekend. Usually when I go to my parents I am gone until later in the evening. We spend all day there and leave around dinner time. This time, I was dropping the kids off and immediately going home, so I could surprise my wife, and we could go out as soon as possible. I had made reservations at a nice restaurant, and was hoping to go to a few places for some drinks first. I left at 8:30, and was back in our housing plan before 12:30. As I pulled onto my street, I saw a truck parked in front of my house. I did not recognize it. I assumed it was someone seeing the neighbors though, because it's not that unusual for someone to park in front of our house. I parked a few houses away thinking I would sneak into the house and surprise my wife instead of pulling in the driveway and going in the garage. I went in through a basement door. I was as quiet as possible, but as soon as I walked in I heard her making sounds from the floor above. When I first heard it, I thought she was just by herself, maybe having some personal time. I didn't want to interrupt her privacy and embarrass her, so I was going to go back to my car and just go in the garage so she would know I was home. Then I heard a man's voice. I immediately felt sick. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. It is hard to describe how I felt in this moment. I decided to go upstairs. I had no desire to confront them. I just wanted to see what was going on. I moved slowly and quietly and went up the stairs. The door was halfway open. The kitchen was empty, but I could tell they were in the living room. It was obvious what was going on at this point by the sounds. There was no way for me to look in the living room without them seeing me. I pulled out my phone and opened my camera app. I put my phone just around the corner of a wall. This part is so hard to write. I could see my wife with a man I didn't recognize. I won't go into detail on what they were doing, but I think you can figure it out. I started recording it. I was thinking that I needed a record of it for whatever I decided to do in the future. I just stood there in my kitchen, watching this all unfold on my phone screen. I felt like I could just scream at any moment, but for some reason I just froze completely. This went on for several minutes. She finally jumped off of him and made a comment about going to the bedroom, and they went upstairs. She even made a comment about how much time they had left. I walked into the living room and found the guy's pants. I took his wallet out and took pictures of his driver's license. I know his name and his address now. I've never met him. I have no idea how my wife knows him. I left the house the same way I entered. I went back to my car and cried like the pathetic man I am. I decided to watch the video to make sure it recorded. I watched it all. I'll spare the details, but I sat in my car for at least half an hour. I couldn't drive to my parents and get the kids as I would have to explain why. I decided that I would pull in the driveway, open the garage, and just pretend like I was there to surprise her. I took my time getting into the house. I made a lot of noise. When I saw her, she was very flustered, asking me why I was home, etc. She was in a robe and said she was just getting ready for a bath. I told her about my plans, and she seemed excited. She poured us both a glass of wine and said we should pre-game before getting ready. I don't think I talked much really. She took me into the living room. I'm not proud of what I let happen. I could faintly see the guy sneaking downstairs and going to the basement stairs, but I didn't say or do anything. I just let my wife continue doing what she was doing to me. Since that day, I have watched the video of her repeatedly. I can't bring myself to make any decisions on what I should do next. She seems to know something is wrong with me, because she's asked a few times if I'm okay. I feel worthless, and every time I hit a low point I watch that video again. I feel like I've watched it at least 10 times a day since I caught them. 10-day later update for you. I stopped watching the video after reading all the comments on my first post. It has helped clear my mind and allowed me to focus on next steps. This has allowed me to be mostly back to my normal self for both my kids and my job. I have gone through my wife's phone and found nothing. I searched the guy's name from the driver's license. I've figured out how they met. He's a landscaper. She was calling some a few months ago to clean up our yard and ended up getting some mulching and cleanup done. I've driven past his house many times. I think he is single as I couldn't find any records of other people living at that address. I've only seen a truck parked in the driveway when I have driven by. I have been avoiding my wife after the kids are in bed to try to limit one-on-one time. I don't want any awkward conversations, and I also don't want to have sex. I have mostly been successful with this, but did slip up one night when I had a little too much to drink. I hated myself for it the next day. I don't believe she has seen him since the day I caught them. I've been paying attention anytime she's gone. I obviously can't track her 100%. I've read about Apple AirTags, but I use Android. I'm guessing any app one would put on her phone may be discovered. I have installed a doorbell camera on our house though, so I can always see the street. When I did this, my wife didn't say anything. We continue to do things as a family as we normally would. I have done my best to not let her know what I know, and to continue to be a good dad to my kids. The weird thing I'm dealing with now is that she's planned a night out with a friend for drinks. It's a friend from work, so I don't know her at all, and I'm not connected with this person on social media. When she told me, I made up some excuse about work and said I couldn't watch the kids. She ended up getting our neighbor to agree to babysit. Now I'm debating if I should follow her to really see if she's meeting her friend or the guy. It seems like I'm heading towards a confrontation, either way, when I just want everything to go back to normal. I'm going to leave my house soon and pretend to be going to work. I'll probably just go to a bar to kill time until I can drive by the place she's supposed to be going to. I'm filled with fucking dread about all of this. On the night when she was going out with her friend, I still pretended I had work and left the house after the babysitter arrived. I went to a bar and had a few drinks. Then I drove over to the restaurant she said she was going to. I saw her car in the parking lot. I'm not going to lie, I was on edge and incredibly nervous despite the drinks earlier. I was so worried I would walk in and see her with that guy. I was hoping to sneak in and get a look without being seen, but that failed miserably. She saw me as soon as I walked in the door. She was with her friend and not the guy. We had the "what are you doing here? Thought you were working" expected conversation. I told her work ended early, so I wanted to stop by to say hi since we had a babysitter. I left after a couple drinks and went home to relieve the sitter. So many of you have commented on my last post that I need to confront her, and I decided in that moment that I would. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I got the kids to bed and waited for her to come home. I watched the video again to remind myself of what happened. When she got home, she was surprised I was still up and apparently could tell from the way I looked that something was wrong. I poured it all out on her. It probably wasn't fair of me. I didn't even let her sit down. I told her everything. I played part of the video to show her what I saw. I called her some harsh names, said she ruined our lives. In that moment, I was incredibly angry. She was very upset, heavily crying and shaking. She told me how terrible she felt about everything that happened. I told her she had to tell me everything that happened with that guy, and she laid it all out. She cheated on me twice with him. After the time I saw them, she cut things off because she knew it was wrong and she loves me. I asked her for proof, but she said she had already deleted and blocked him on her phone, Facebook, and Instagram. She did tell me that he is single and knew she was married. She asked me to delete the video, but I refused. She asked me why, and I really didn't have a reason other than I feel I need to hold on to it for now. She got a little angry at that and asked if I was keeping it to watch again. It was very late at this point, so we decided to go to bed and talk more the next day when we had more time to think. She continued to apologize repeatedly for what she did. We slept separately that night. Over the next few days, things between us seemed better. I felt some relief that it was all out in the open now. We have continued to talk, and it feels like we are on a path of staying together and moving past this. I have made it clear that she is never to see or talk to that guy again. While things feel like they are improving, I am still struggling to trust her. Worse yet is that I have a trip coming up for work, and I'll be gone for a few days. I've told her that I am not comfortable with leaving right now, but I can't skip this trip. My boss made it clear that I'm needed. She said I could put cameras up in the house to keep an eye on her if it would make me feel better. Sadly, I may do that. I'll be gone for at least 3 days. Overall, things are okay. Kids are oblivious that anything is going on, and it seems that slowly my wife and I will eventually get back to normal. I hope so, at least. I'm a little ashamed to admit that I have watched the video a few times since all of this. I'm thinking that I should probably delete it, so it's gone from my life. I don't know what's wrong with me. It was my 18th birthday, and as a newly minted adult, I was enjoying my grown-up-ness by getting as drunk as I could. I'm with my friends in this pub in town, and we're gathered round a table. There's maybe 6 of us. A couple of tables over, there's a group of girls, and there's maybe 6 of them. One of them catches my eye when I look over, and she's stunning. Long red hair, bright blue eyes, full pink lips. I look away and carry on drinking, but she keeps catching my eye again and again. We do that thing where you both catch each other looking, then pretend you weren't looking at all whilst doing it even more. Eventually I need another drink, so I get up and head to the bar, and I notice her doing the same. At this point, I notice her body. She's short, but with a great figure. Breasts that are good and round and big, small waist, wide hips, great bum, everything. I'm pretty much fully in lust with this girl, and we've not even met. We get to the bar, and I let her order before me. She gets something like a lemonade. Unusual for that pub, but I figure someone's got to be the designated driver, and it's probably her. I order a pint for myself, turn round to head back, and she's there, right behind me. We get to chatting, and she tells me her name's Helena. I make some kind of Shakespeare joke, she laughs, and I'm in. The rest of the night, I talk mostly to her, though it's cool, because the other lads have descended on the group of girls at the other table. The evening wears on, and eventually we get to the, well, are we gonna fuck, or just agree to meet each other again, or fuck off and pretend this never happened stage. We go for the former. We go back to my place, being very careful not to wake my parents up because I'm still shit and live at home, and have a great night. Long story short, we ended up going out for a while, always meeting out somewhere, then heading back to mine. Eventually we drift into actually being a couple, and from there we start to do more couple-y things. And that's when the crazy leaks in. She starts arguing with me about every little thing imaginable, from not saying hello in the right way, to not being there to wake her up at precisely 6 hours, 1 minute, and 9 seconds in the morning, or whatever. Every argument escalates into whatever the fuck she's decided to rant about, and always ends the same way. She threatens to dump me, I coax her back, we kiss, fuck, everyone's happy. After maybe a month and a half of this or so, I get bored of it all. I do the decent thing, and take her out for coffee to a cozy little cafe, tell her in the best way I can that we're not working out, and it's all pretty surprisingly amicable. Except it's not. The phone calls start. Always from a private number, always of crying. At first to my mobile, then to my home phone. Always a private number, always crying. I know she's faking it, because if I never answered the phone, my parents would have a friendly little chat, then hand the phone to me, and immediately it's like Niagara Fall of fucking tears. Then the emails. Weird, ranty emails of gibberish and threats, and pleading to take me back. Hundreds of them. There'd be days when they'd come every 5 minutes, days when there'd be nothing at all. I changed my number to get rid of her, got a whole new mobile number, and we went X-directory with our number. Changed my email too. I still got them for about 6 months after, but eventually they stopped. And that should have been the end of it. Little did I know. I started going online, on various forums, games, etc. On one such forum, I struck up a friendship with a girl on there. I know she was a girl because she showed me pictures of herself with little scribbled, HIOFAB I am random username, and whatever, which is pretty conclusive as evidence goes. We had a great time chatting and whatever, and we had so much in common, it was completely insane. Like, not only did she like the same things I did, but she was this utterly stunning little brunette, like a proper English rose. Anyway, eventually we started going out, having little Skype chats, though she never went on cam, which I was cool with because I looked like shit a lot of the time. Things started out well, but over time, she got a bit too clingy for my liking. She'd ask where I'd been if I was a minute late, or got jealous if she'd seen a picture of me on Facebook with another girl. She got upset at the slightest thing, or angry if I mentioned another girl's name, even if it was, oh, Louise said she liked my work, when Louise was the lecturer for my course. Eventually I got pissed off, dumped her, and we had a nice clean break. I avoided those forums, changed my Skype because, remember, I'd had bad times with my previous ex and communication stuff, and that was that. Not learning my lesson at all, I went on different forums, found another girl, and got to know her too. This one was a tan blonde, all boobs and legs and sexy as fuck Australian accent. She liked most of the same things I did, with enough difference that we could teach each other how to do things, how to appreciate things, how to like things. She was laid back, too, and compared to the latest ex, she was a breath of fresh air. If I got on Skype half an hour later than I'd said I would, she was cool with it. If I spent a conversation talking about my lecturer, using her name every dozen words, she'd bitch along with me, making me laugh, making me smile, making me love. Eventually, I talked of meeting her, though it was a long way from England to Sydney, and expensive as anything. I was willing to fly to meet her, because I wanted to see her face to face, to see the places she'd told me about, to go to the clubs and bars and restaurants she told me she loved. I wanted to hold her in my arms and kiss her, and actually have a proper girlfriend again. She immediately broke up with me, saying I'd only be disappointed with the reality. Then came the latest girl. She was Canadian, brunette, something of a rock chick, completely different to my usual kind of girl. We met on some chat site I used when I was bored, got talking, swapped details, etc. She introduced me to a ton of music I'd never even considered listening to, and I did the same for her. If I complained about something, she told me to man the fuck up. If I turned up late, She told me it was fine because time is something the man makes us believe in. She was the coolest fucking girl I'd ever known. Again we dated on Skype and whatever. Again we talked about meeting. Again she broke up with me, saying that it had all just been in fun or whatever. It was cool. It was amicable and fine, and that was that. All this happened over a couple of years, with me being with each girl anywhere between 4 and 6 months, and my between times being maybe 1 to 3 months. I was a quick worker, and fuck the rebound shit. Anyway, I came back to my hometown for the holiday. I think it was reading week or something, and fuck being on campus then. I was wandering along the road, when who should I see but Psycho Girl. Rather than avoiding her, I carried on walking. She came up to me, said she had something to tell me, and we needed to talk desperately. I made all kinds of excuses, but each one she batted aside until she wore me down. We went to the pub, and she told me something that basically terrified me. She hadn't wanted to give up on me, so she'd used what she knew of me to find places I'd go online. She'd made different accounts, lots of different accounts, in the hopes that she'd find me, so she could talk to me, and try and win me back. Except she'd made fake accounts, so I wouldn't immediately ignore her. See where this is going? Yep. Every one of the girls I'd dated had been her, using pictures of friends, using fake accents, pretending to not know things she knew. She'd followed me across at least a dozen different websites, stalked me across hundreds of posts and threads, and all the time had made me believe I was talking to completely different people. I didn't date anyone for a couple of years after that. I don't know what came of her. After that, she sort of disappeared from my life, and I haven't seen her since. I went out briefly with a couple of other girls, but only ones I'd met face to face, who didn't look anything like her at all. I don't know if she still follows me about online, or if she does, if she knows about this account. But if you're looking at this, hi Helena. I know it probably sounds bad, but hear me out. In my head it's a long story, but I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. Sorry if it sounds choppy. Also, English isn't my first language. Last year I had to move in with my parents because I was having a hard time finding a new place to rent after a really bad breakup. My parents and I don't get along great for a lot of reasons, and it made everything a lot worse. So to get out of that I eventually decided to apply for some jobs in other places. At the time I really didn't want to since I'd lived in that city my whole life, and I liked my job, but I just couldn't stay with my parents anymore. I found a job pretty quickly because this hotel was reopening after changing owners, and they weren't finding staff easily, so I ended up moving here in October. In the beginning I wasn't socializing much because it's really hard to find friends here when everyone already knows everyone. My country and region are doing well, no confirmed cases in town yet, but it definitely didn't help with making friends. I've also been pretty busy because I decided to buy a house. It just kinda happened because my boss knew the previous owners, and it was super cheap since it needed a lot of work, but it definitely made this move feel very permanent. Then in May this guy, let's call him Eric, and I got stuck in the social distancing queue outside the pharmacy together and started talking. I told him I was new, and he invited me to a barbecue with his friends. Angel, I'm not great with new people, but they made me feel welcome and were all very nice. After that we just kept hanging out, mostly me and Eric, which I thought was because he was quite careful during these times and only saw his big group of friends outside. Plus we were the only two who weren't in a relationship or had kids, so it made sense in my head that we were alone a lot. I'd cook him dinner/lunch, I'm a chef, and he'd show me great hiking places and help out a lot with the renovations on the house. I also started telling him about the breakup and stuff, and even though I feel like I've moved on, it was still nice that he was so understanding. Like, I always thought it sounded so cheesy when people talked about knowing like a week into a friendship or relationship that it was going to be different, but that's the only way I can describe what it's felt like. I promise now that I'm writing it down it's so obvious, but I honestly didn't think much of it since I've never dated a guy before. Then like 2 to 3 weeks ago he called and asked if I wanted to have dinner on my next night off, and also said just you and me. He seemed kinda weird and formal, but I assumed it was something else going on, and just said yes, to which he responded, "It's a date then," and I assumed he meant that as a joke-y line because I have friends who have in the past. He picked this restaurant in another town that was relatively fancy that I'd never been to, and I drove him home afterwards, and he told me good night, and that he'd had a great time. Usually we're not that formal with each other, but we weren't really acting that different during dinner, so again I didn't think much of it. Then over the next week or so he started sending hearts and texts and would call me some pet names here and there, which is the first thing that stood out to me a lot. Then earlier this week he grabbed my hand, while we were out during his lunch break, and that's when it finally clicked. It really caught me by surprise, and I didn't know how to react, so I tried to play it cool and go along with it. Then yesterday he texted and asked if we were still on for our movie night on Sunday, and I just said, "Yeah, of course," and I'm starting to panic a bit. I grew up pretty conservative, and I guess didn't question my sexuality a lot, even when I got to university, and a lot of other people were. I've always been awkward when it comes to that stuff, and I never really made the first move with any of the girls I've dated. But I've been thinking about it for the last few days, and I've realized I really like him, and all the stuff he's done never made me uncomfortable. Quite the opposite, actually. He's cute, definitely what I would have said is my type, but like a guy version, and it feels different than any friendship I've ever had. Like again, looking back, I definitely haven't been acting super platonic with him, and we've gotten close really fast. And if I'm being honest, if he'd been a girl, I also would have assumed that's where this was going. I guess my issue is, should I tell him next time I see him that I didn't realize we were dating? Should I wait? Does he need to know? I don't want him to feel embarrassed that he assumed or think that I'm using him to figure myself out, but I also don't want to lie. I genuinely want to see where this goes since he makes me really happy. To summarize, I moved to a new town after a bad breakup with a girl, met this guy, thought we were just instantly good friends. I didn't realize he was actually asking me out, then realized it when he held my hand when we went for lunch. I thought about it, and I really like him a lot. Should I tell him I didn't realize we were dating, and that he's the first guy I've ever dated, or should I wait a bit? Not tell him at all. Here's what happened afterwards. So we had our dinner/movie night yesterday, and I was very nervous. Mostly because I was scared that how new it was to me was going to be a deal breaker. But Eric came over, and I think he instantly realized I was acting weird. He didn't say anything while he was helping me cook, but then when we sat down to eat, he almost immediately asked what was up. So I basically said something like, "I really like you, and I want to see where this goes, but I want you to know it's very new to me, and I'm not sure you're cool with that." And he asked what exactly was new to me, and I said I'd only dated girls before. Which then led to a conversation where I couldn't avoid telling him that I didn't realize we were dating until that lunch. He actually got really quiet for a few seconds after that, and I was scared he was upset, but then he just laughed. Basically, he thought I'd been flirting with him for quite some time. Looking back, I probably was, just not intentionally. And all of his friends had been saying like, "He seems so into you, it's really obvious, he's probably just too shy to make the first move." He even mentioned some other stuff we or I had done that I gotta admit definitely doesn't sound platonic when he retells it. So I can see why they thought that, and ultimately they were right, I guess. And during that lunch, he'd apparently thought I was reaching to grab his hand, so he reached out too. Otherwise he probably wouldn't have done it, because he said he's never been good at making the first move physically. He said when he asked me to dinner, that was a huge deal, and his friends had tried to hype him up for a while, and that's probably why I didn't realize that he was asking me out since he was super nervous. Anyway, we ended up talking a lot after dinner. He didn't come out publicly, aside from a few close friends, until a year or so ago either, so he definitely understood that I don't have a lot of experience. He hasn't had a lot of relationships in general, at least not any proper and public ones, since he hadn't come out, and it's a pretty conservative area, so there aren't a lot of guys who are out of the closet here. He actually admitted that he'd even been nervous to talk to me that first time we met since I looked kind of lumberjack. Why? His words, not mine. Though the day we met I think I hadn't shaved in a while, so I don't doubt it. And he also knows rumors travel fast here, especially when someone doesn't really fit in. So I guess he was worried that I'd fit the small-town conservative type or have heard all the gossip. The whole, "it's a date" thing, for example, would never happen between two guys who are just friends here. I've definitely noticed the culture, and it's something we talked about too, since being out here isn't always easy. So we might try to keep it low-key at first, and mostly tell his friends and some of mine. I could probably ramble on about him and what we talked about for a long time, but to keep it short, it was a really nice talk, and we want to take it slow, but we also realize we've basically been half dating since May, so it felt weird not to make it official. It was a crisp autumn evening. The air smelled faintly of pumpkin spice and wood smoke, and I was cautiously optimistic about this date. I'd met Mike on a dating app, and his profile screamed normal, emotionally stable guy. You know, the unicorn we're all searching for. His pictures were cute, his messages were witty but not overbearing, and he even used proper punctuation. I thought, wow, how bad could this possibly be? Oh, sweet, naive past me. How little you knew. Mike suggested we grab dinner at this little Italian place downtown. Very casual, but cozy. Perfect. I showed up a few minutes early, because I'm the kind of person who likes to scope out the exits just in case I need to fake a phone call and escape. You know, standard operating procedure. Mike arrived shortly after, and he looked just like his photos. So far, so good. He had this big, friendly smile, and he seemed normal. Seemed being the operative word. We exchanged pleasantries, got seated, and ordered drinks. I went with a glass of red wine, and he ordered milk. Yes, milk. At an Italian restaurant. I thought, okay, maybe he's one of those quirky guys, and I brushed it off. Who was I to judge someone's beverage choices? But then things started to take a turn. As we waited for our food, he launched into a 20-minute monologue about his exotic milk collection. Yes, you read that right. This man had a refrigerator at home dedicated to bottles of milk from around the world. Goat milk from France, camel milk from the Middle East, yak milk from Tibet. He even mentioned something called reindeer milk, which I didn't even know was a thing. He was very passionate about it, describing the nutty undertones of camel milk like it was a fine wine. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there nodding politely, sipping my Merlot, and wondering if this was some elaborate prank. Then came the food. I ordered a simple pasta dish because carbs are my love language, and Mike ordered a plate of plain spaghetti. No sauce. No cheese. Just plain noodles. When the plate arrived, he pulled a tiny bottle of milk out of his pocket and poured it over the spaghetti like some kind of unholy Alfredo sauce. I swear, I saw the waiter physically flinch. I asked, "Is that milk?" And he grinned like a kid on Christmas morning and said, "Oh yeah, this is my special yak milk. It's aged for 3 months. Wanna try?" I politely declined. At this point, I'm mentally planning my escape, but it gets worse. As we're eating, he starts talking about his hobby. Now I'm thinking, please let it be something normal like hiking or photography. Nope. Mike's hobby was making realistic sock puppets of famous historical figures. He whipped out his phone to show me photos of his collection. And let me tell you, there is no amount of wine in the world that can prepare you for seeing a sock puppet version of Napoleon Bonaparte staring back at you. He had a whole gallery. Cleopatra, Einstein, Abraham Lincoln, complete with a tiny felt hat. I tried to be supportive because, hey, everyone's got their thing, right? But then he said, "I actually brought one with me. Do you want to meet Winston Churchill?" Before I could answer, he pulled a sock puppet out of his coat pocket and started doing an impression of Winston Churchill giving a speech. In the middle of the restaurant. Loudly. People were staring. The waiter was trying not to laugh. I was mortified. I thought, okay, this is the climax. It can't possibly get worse. Oh, but it did. After dinner, he insisted on walking me to my car. I figured that was harmless enough, so I agreed. As we reached my car, he stopped, looked deeply into my eyes, and said, "I had an amazing time tonight. I feel like we really connected." I was about to politely thank him and hop in my car when he added, "I'd love for you to meet my mom. She's in the car." I blinked. "Your mom?" He pointed to a minivan parked a few spots away. Sure enough, there was an older woman sitting in the passenger seat, waving enthusiastically. "She drove me here," he said. "I don't have a license because I got banned from driving for hitting too many mailboxes." At that point, I didn't even have the energy to ask for clarification. I just muttered something about having an early morning and practically sprinted to my car. As I drove away, I saw him and his mom waving at me in my rearview mirror, Winston Churchill sock puppet still firmly in hand. So as you can guess, there was no second date. Oh goodness, my worst date was pretty bad. I was 18 or 19 and got set up on a date by a friend. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship and she wanted me to see a good guy. The man worked with her husband for the county police. He and I exchanged numbers, but don't exchange photos because we both wanted to get to know each other as a person and not judge based off looks. He was honest, told me he was a little bit bigger. When I hear a little bit bigger, I think F a guy that is stocky / has a minor gut. Not a deal breaker, so it wasn't an issue. I was having some car issues, so we agreed to have him pick me up for our date. He sends me a text saying he'll be there in 30 minutes, which I appreciate, so I know how much longer I have to finish my makeup. 30 minutes goes by, and I think I hear a car pull into the driveway, but I wasn't sure. 2 minutes goes by and I hear honking. Yep, guy is honking the horn to let me know he's there. Doesn't come to my door or even send a text, he honks. I go outside and walk to his truck, and as I'm struggling to get in, I'm only 5 feet 1 inch, and his truck is lifted. I want to get right back out. This man was more than a little big, he was huge. I'm talking close to 350 big. I was irritated about that. Not that he was big, but that he lied to me about his size. He starts driving and the conversation is going well, so no issues there. I ask him where we're going, and he just tells me, a nice, small and local restaurant that I really like. Alright, I can work with that, as I love supporting local places. We get there, and the place looks cute on the outside. He parks right next to the handicap parking, so we're really close to the door. By the time he walks to the front door, he's breathing extremely heavy and is really out of breath. I'm trying not to show any concern, but I can't help but wonder to myself, how the hell is this man an officer? We get inside the place, and it's a buffet. I know that's not the worst, but I really hate buffets. I've just never liked them, as I find them to be pretty disgusting, especially if you watch how people handle the food when they're getting it. This puts me in kind of a down mood, but I'm not saying anything because he said it's one of his favorite places. As we make our way through the restaurant, we get stopped multiple times because everyone knows him and wants to talk, slightly annoying, but fine. That is until I hear him introduce me as his girlfriend. That's right, our first date, and he's telling everyone he talks to that I'm his girlfriend. People would ask how long we've been together, and I would speak up saying it was first date and that we weren't actually dating. He looked like a sad puppy dog, but we weren't, and I wasn't going to tell people we were. We finished dinner, and he tells me we need to go back to his place real quick because we need to get some stuff for the second part of our date, but won't tell me what the second part is. We get to his place, and there are a bunch of cars out front. I just dismissed it as possibly roommates. He asks me to go inside with him to grab the stuff, and as we walk in, I'm greeted by his entire family. Mother, father, grandparents, uncles, aunts, sisters, brother-in-laws, nieces, and nephews. This is pretty much my breaking point, where I decided I can't keep looking for positives, and that there is no way in hell this man is getting a second date. As I'm meeting his family, they keep telling me how nice it is to meet his girlfriend. Girlfriend, there is that word again. In trying not to cringe as I talk to his family, but they keep calling me his girlfriend, no matter how many times I tell them that this is only our first date. His nieces were adorable, and one asked to sit on my lap and have me braid her hair. I'm great with kids, and won't say no to a little girl asking me to do her hair. As I'm braiding her hair, she asks me when am I going to become her auntie? That put me into shock. This little 5-year-old just asked me when I'm going to marry her uncle. I try not to show how shocked I am, and just tell her I'm not sure. Once I finish her hair, I get up and go talk to someone else. As I'm standing there talking to his sister, the best friend and his wife walk in the door. I find out at this moment our date is actually going to be a double date. His sister brings up marriage and does it really loud to the point where most people can hear, and it goes silent as they're waiting for my response. I just say this is our first date, so if it was to get to that, it will be a while. In my head, I know it's never going to get to that point. My date and his best friend go into the garage to get stuff to put into the truck. As they're doing that, I get asked if I'm really wearing that. It's August, so I have on a cute tank top, shorts and strappy sandals to go jiggin'. I have no damn clue what the hell jiggin' is, so I say yes. Family members are looking shocked, and his sister has me a bottle of bug spray and tells me I'm going to need it. We get in the truck, and his friend follows us. I ask him what exactly we're going to do, and he tells me frog jiggin'. I have no idea what the hell that is and ask him. Frog gigging equals frog hunting. For a first date, he takes me frog gigging. Seriously, please don't take a person frog gigging for a first date. He pulls over and his friends get into the back of the truck, and then he drives into this big field. He finds a spot, and the three of them get all excited about finding some frogs. I'm pretty annoyed by now, but in trying to be nice, and I talk with the other woman there. Once again, the damn topic of marriage gets brought up. For some reason, this is a great thing to talk about on a first date for these people. As the lady and I talk, she talks about her wedding, and tells me how they went frog gigging, and caught enough to serve fried frog legs at their wedding. They also had hush puppies, sweet tea, lemonade, potato salad, black-eyed peas, and some other stuff. As we're talking about their wedding, her husband grabs the bat out of the truck bed, jumps out, and runs into the field. She must have seen the look on my face and tells me he's a taxidermist and probably just saw something. Sure enough, he found a fox and looks extremely proud of himself as he's walking back to the truck, holding this fox by the tail that he just killed. He then starts talking about his job, and I honestly have no interest, and I'm at the point where I'm tired of being nice because I'm being bit by mosquitoes constantly, and the date has just been hell. It must have become apparent because he got the hint and stopped talking. Finally, the date is over, and he's driving me back home. He keeps talking about how much fun he had, how he can't wait for a second date, and that he really likes me. Icing on the cake, he lights up a cigarette as he's driving. I really hate the smell of cigarettes, and my asthma starts kicking in. We finally pull into my driveway, and he leans in for a kiss. I tell him I don't kiss on the first date, which is a lie, and get into my house as fast as I possibly can.